The wind cut through Manhattan like a blade that Christmas night, turning every breath into ice. Snow piled against the curbs on Fifth Avenue, glowing under the holiday lights that made the world look festive, even as Marina Ellsworth's life collapsed in front of her. She stood barefoot on the marble floor of the luxury apartment she once called home, her hands shaking, her suitcase half open. Brandon Hale, the man she had married with her whole heart, pointed toward the door, with a cold smirk twisting across his lips. "Get out, Marina. Sabrina's moving in tonight. You're done here." Behind him, Sabrina Cole lounged on the sofa, wearing Marina's silk robe, sipping wine like she owned the place. "Hurry up, sweetheart," she cooed. "Some of us actually matter to him." Marina's throat tightened. She had no family to run to, no savings left. Brandon had drained their joint account months ago. She only realized it tonight, right before he shoved her suitcase into her arms. The world she tried so hard to build was ripping apart stitch by stitch. With nowhere else to go, she stepped into the freezing hallway. The door slammed behind her, the lock clicking like a final betrayal. Snowflakes stung her cheeks as she stumbled onto the street, her breath turning into frantic clouds. She didn't notice the traffic light had changed. She didn't notice the black Bentley turning the corner. She only felt the jolt: metal, ice, gravity, her body sliding across the slick pavement. A car door slammed. Footsteps hurried toward her. A man knelt down, his coat flaring like a dark wing. His face was all sharp lines and concern, framed by the falling snow. Adrian Kingsley, one of the most elusive CEOs in New York, looked at her as if the world had just tilted off its axis. "Don't move," he said, voice low, steady. "I've got you." Marina blinked through tears and shock. I didn't mean." "I know," he whispered, lifting her gently. "You're safe now." But neither of them had any idea that this collision, violent, accidental, and heartbreaking, was about to unravel secrets powerful enough to destroy empires. And Brandon Hale had just made the one mistake that would cost him everything. Snow swirled around Marina Ellsworth as if the entire city were turning its back on her. Fifth Avenue shimmered with Christmas lights, but none of it felt real. Her breath shuddered in the cold as she clutched her thin coat tighter around her trembling body. The remnants of Brandon's cruelty still echoed in her ears: the way he slammed the door, the laughter of Sabrina in the background, the hollow thump of her suitcase landing on the floor. Everything inside her felt scraped, raw. She stepped off the curb without thinking, her vision blurred by tears. Her boots slipped on ice she didn't see. Cars honked in the distance, but in her dazed state, the world felt muffled, like she was underwater. She took one more shaky step forward, and the heel of her boot snapped. Her body pitched forward, her suitcase flying out of her hands. She hit the ground hard, the icy pavement knocking the breath from her lungs. Pain shot up her leg as she tried to push herself up, but the world spun. A blinding pair of headlights swept across her. The low growl of an engine, urgent and close. Brakes screeched. The sleek black Bentley swerved, sliding on the ice before bumping against her suitcase. It wasn't a violent crash, just enough to knock her sideways again, scraping her palms against the road. The city noise sharpened instantly. People gasped, someone yelled for help, but Marina couldn't focus on any of it. All she could do was breathe shallowly, staring at the tire inches from where her leg had been. The driver's door flew open. Footsteps pounded against the snow. A tall man in a charcoal wool coat knelt beside her, his gloved hands steady as he touched her shoulder. "Hey, don't try to move." His voice was warm but commanding, a tone that made people listen. Marina blinked up at him, her lips parted. She had seen pictures of Adrian Kingsley before, on billboards, in Forbes, on financial news channels, but nothing had prepared her for the way he looked at her now. Not annoyed, not inconvenienced, concerned. "I'm calling EMS," he said, already pulling out his phone. "Are you hurt anywhere? Can you breathe?" She nodded weakly. I slipped. I didn't mean to walk into the street. It's okay." His voice softened as he shrugged off his coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. The warmth hit her like a wave she didn't deserve. "You're freezing. Sit still." People gathered around them in a loose circle. A woman whispered, "Is that Adrian Kingsley?" Another murmured, "He never leaves the tower." Is she someone important? No, Marina thought bitterly. I'm nobody. But Adrian didn't treat her like nobody. His hand rested lightly on her back, grounding her as she shivered. "You're safe," he repeated gently. "I won't let anything happen to you. T. His words were meant to reassure, but they cut deeper than any cruelty Brandon had ever thrown at her. No one had ever said them to her before. The wail of an approaching ambulance filled the frozen air. Adrian shifted closer to her, shielding her from the wind. "I'll go with you to the hospital. You're not alone." Her breath caught. Why would a man like him, a billionaire CEO, care about a woman lying broken on the asphalt? Before she could ask, a voice cut through the cold night. "Brandon." He had stepped out of the lobby across the street, eyes widening as he recognized her next to Adrian Kingsley. And in that instant, Marina saw something she had never seen in Brandon before: panic. The ambulance lights cast red and blue streaks across the snow as Marina Ellsworth tried to steady her breathing. Her palms stung, her ankle throbbed, and her heart felt like a cracked piece of glass ready to fall apart completely. But none of that compared to the humiliation burning beneath her skin as Brandon Hale marched toward her across the icy street. "Marina," he barked, voice dripping with fake concern. "What on earth are you doing on the ground?" And his eyes snapped to the Bentley behind her. "Who the hell is this?" Adrian Kingsley rose slowly from where he'd been kneeling, his expression unreadable but somehow threatening without trying. He stood taller than Brandon by several inches, and with the cold air swirling around them, he looked like he was carved out of winter itself. "She slipped," Adrian said calmly. "And you are?" Brandon huffed. "Her husband." The word hit Marina like a slap. Not because it wasn't true legally, it still was, but because minutes before, he had thrown her out like she was clutter he no longer wanted. Adrian's gaze shifted to Marina, taking in her trembling hands, the bruise forming on her cheekbone, the heartbreak she couldn't hide. Something sharp flickered behind his eyes. "You let your wife wander outside in conditions like this?" Brandon scoffed. "She left. She's dramatic like that." Marina flinched. Adrian noticed. He took one step closer to Brandon, his voice lowering. "She could have died." Brandon rolled his eyes. "Look, man, I don't know who you think you are." "You don't?" a bystander whispered. "That's Adrian Kingsley." Brandon's face twitched. Recognition hit him like a punch. The EMTs arrived, gently lifting Marina to her feet. Adrian steadied her with a hand on her back. "Careful," he murmured. "Don't put weight on that leg." Brandon pushed forward, trying to reclaim control. "I'll take her. She's my wife." Marina froze. The words sliced deeper this time. Adrian positioned himself between them with quiet authority. "She goes with medical professionals, and she chooses who rides with her." Every pair of eyes turned to Marina. She swallowed hard, her breath fogged in the freezing air. I don't want to go with him." Brandon's jaw dropped. "Marina, don't be stupid." Adrian snapped, his voice like steel. "She said no." The EMTs nodded and guided Marina toward the ambulance. But as she reached the door, the cold air shifted heavy, electrified. She heard boots crunching behind her. Adrian had followed. "Wait," Marina whispered, gripping the edge of the ambulance. "You don't have to." "I do." He met her eyes, steady and certain. "Someone needs to look after you tonight." Her breath hitched. No one had ever said something like that to her. She climbed inside, and Adrian stepped in after her, settling beside her on the bench. The doors slammed shut, cutting off Brandon's shouts as the ambulance pulled away. Snow blurred the world into streaks of white and red. Marina looked at Adrian, confused, overwhelmed, grateful, and terrified of needing him. He studied her quietly, as if trying to understand the pain she wasn't speaking. Then he gently lifted the broken heel from her boot, holding it in his gloved hand. "You didn't fall," he said softly. "You were pushed off balance long before you stepped into that street." His words struck deeper than any physical wound. And Marina realized he saw more than she'd ever wanted to show. What she didn't know was that Adrian already suspected who she really was long before she did. The ambulance hissed to a stop beside the ER entrance, steam curling into the icy night as the doors swung open. Marina Ellsworth felt the cold rush back in like a tide, but this time she wasn't facing it alone. Adrian Kingsley stepped down after her, his presence a quiet force that steadied her shaken world. Inside the hospital, everything was fluorescent lights and hurried footsteps. Nurses took her information, wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, and guided her to a curtained bay. Adrian remained a respectful distance away, but his gaze never left her, not with pity, but with a strange attentiveness she didn't understand. When the nurse left, he finally spoke. "You don't have to explain anything," he said gently, hands tucked in his coat pockets. "But I'd like to know if you're safe where you live." Marina stared at the linoleum floor. "I don't live anywhere now." The words cracked something inside her. She hadn't said them out loud before. They tasted like failure. Adrian's brows lowered, not in judgment, but in something like anger, anger aimed nowhere near her. "What your husband did was unacceptable." With affection. "He's not really my husband anymore," she whispered. "He made that very clear tonight." Adrian stepped closer, the air shifting with him. He lowered his voice. "You walked into the street because you were overwhelmed. Anyone would have been. Trauma clouds judgment." She blinked at him. How could a man who lived in penthouses and boardrooms understand anything about trauma? But his eyes, dark, steady, sincere, held a depth she didn't expect. A doctor entered then, examined her ankle, applied a compression wrap, and confirmed it was a sprain. "She needs rest for a few days," he instructed. "No walking long distances, no cold exposure." When he left, Marina gathered her tattered courage. "I can take a cab," she murmured. "I'll figure something out." Adrian shook his head. "You're not walking out into the snow with no place to go." "It's not your responsibility," she whispered. "Maybe not." His jaw tightened. "But I'm making it mine." Her breath caught. He reached into his coat and retrieved a slim leather wallet. From it, he pulled a business card, black matte, embossed with silver letters. Kingsley Innovations. Adrian K. Kingsley, Chief Executive Officer. "I can put you in a suite at the plaza," he said softly. "Just until you're stable. No pressure, no expectations." Her pulse quickened. Why? For a moment, he hesitated, a rare crack in his polished composure. "Because I've seen too many people left behind in this city," he finally said. "And because you looked like someone who hasn't been seen in a very long time." The honesty in his voice made her chest tighten. Before she could respond, footsteps approached. She turned, expecting a nurse, but it wasn't. A hospital security guard stepped in, holding a phone. "Miss Ellsworth? Someone keeps calling the front desk asking for you. He says it's urgent." Marina felt the blood drain from her face. "Brandon." Adrian took one look at her trembling fingers and stepped forward, placing himself squarely between her and the door. His voice dropped, low and protective. "You're not speaking to him tonight, not while I'm here." The guard nodded, stepping back. Marina exhaled shakily, overwhelmed. Adrian's hand hovered near her shoulder, not touching, but close enough that she felt the warmth. "Marina," he murmured, eyes searching hers. "You deserve safety. And tomorrow, you'll have choices again." She swallowed hard, because in that moment, she realized something terrifying. Adrian Kingsley wasn't just helping her, he was starting to feel something. And someone else in this city would not be happy about it. While Marina rested in the ER, wrapped in Adrian's coat, another world, the world she had just been cast out of, was vibrating with cheap laughter and champagne bubbles. Inside the luxury apartment she once called home, Brandon Hale strutted around like a man who had just won something spectacular instead of destroying the last good thing in his life. Sabrina lounged across the sectional sofa, wearing one of Marina's sweaters, the soft cream cashmere Brandon always claimed he never liked. Now it hung off Sabrina like a trophy. Brandon uncorked another bottle of Veuve Clicquot, foam spilling onto the marble countertop. "You see, baby?" he bragged, pacing with exaggerated swagger. "I told you she'd crumble. She can't handle life without me." Sabrina flicked her manicured nails against her wineglass. She looked pathetic when she left. If she had any pride, she would have walked out days ago. Brandon smirked. "She doesn't have pride, she has fear. Or had." He spun around the living room, admiring the space. High ceilings, grand windows overlooking Fifth Avenue, track lighting illuminating every polished corner. Everything Marina had cherished. Everything she had kept spotless. Everything she had believed they built together. Sabrina rose and slinked toward him, sliding her arms around his neck. "And now it's our place." Brandon grinned, pulling her close. "Exactly." But then, buzz, buzz, buzz. His phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen, expecting an alert from one of his clients. Instead, he froze. Unknown caller, hospital switchboard. His face drained of color. "Brandon?" Sabrina asked. "What's wrong?" He didn't answer. He pressed the phone to his ear. "Hello?" A voice crackled on the line. "Is this Mr. Hale? We have multiple messages from you requesting to speak to a Miss Marina Ellsworth." However, she declined the call. The words hit him like a slap. "Declined?" he snapped. "She's my wife." The receptionist's tone remained icy. "She is currently accompanied by someone else. Please do not continue calling. It is disrupting patient care." "Someone else?" Brandon's grip tightened around the phone. Who's with her?" But the line had already gone dead. Sabrina raised an eyebrow. "What's going on?" He hesitated. Then, for the first time since she'd met him, she saw something unfamiliar in his expression: fear. "There was a car accident," he muttered. "And she's with someone." "Someone?" Sabrina laughed. "Oh, come on. Maria can barely talk to strangers without shaking." "Marina," he corrected sharply, jaw clenching. "And the hospital said, accompanied. That's not a doctor, that's someone else." He grabbed his coat and moved toward the door. Sabrina followed, annoyed. "Where do you think you're going?" "To the hospital," Brandon growled. "She's not going to make me look like the bad guy." Sabrina scoffed. "You threw her out on Christmas night." Brandon shot her a glare. "I did what needed to be done. She'll come crawling back, she always does." He opened the door, but before he could step out, his phone buzzed again. This time with a notification. A trending social media clip. He tapped it. A shaky video appeared, filmed from across Fifth Avenue. Snow swirling. A black Bentley stopped in the street. A man lifting Marina into his arms. Not just any man. Adrian Kingsley. The caption read, "Is Adrian Kingsley rescuing a mystery woman on Christmas night?" Brandon staggered backward, breath caught in his throat. Sabrina gasped. Because if the world was watching this video, then Brandon Hale's life was about to implode. And he hadn't even realized Marina was the one holding the match. Marina Ellsworth woke to the soft hum of central heating and the faint scent of eucalyptus drifting through the air. For a brief, blissful second, she didn't remember where she was. She felt something plush beneath her cheek, Egyptian cotton, impossibly soft. A warm glow seeped in from behind tall curtains, the muted gold of a late winter morning. Then it all rushed back. The street, the fall, the ambulance. Adrian Kingsley. She blinked rapidly and pushed herself upright. Her sprained ankle throbbed in reminder of last night's chaos. She looked around, heart pounding. This wasn't a hospital room. This wasn't her old apartment. This was luxury. A suite at the Plaza Hotel, the kind she used to see only in movies. Marble floors veined with gold, a velvet chaise lounge, crystal sconces casting warm halos of light. A tray sat beside her bed, tea, pastries, a bottle of sparkling water, and a small handwritten note. "Good morning. Your doctor said rest is essential. I arranged a temporary suite for your comfort. A.K." Her breath trembled. Why would he go so far for her? As if her thoughts had summoned him, the door to the sitting room opened. Adrian stepped inside, dressed in a navy coat dusted with snowflakes, a takeout cup of coffee in his hand. He paused when he saw her awake. "You're sitting up," he said, relief flickering across his features. "How's the ankle?" "Sore," she admitted, "but manageable." He nodded. "The doctor sent over supplies, and I asked room service to prepare breakfast in case you're hungry." End quote. "You didn't have to do all this." "I know," he replied quietly, "but someone should." His words wounded and soothed her at the same time. Adrian set the coffee on a nearby table and pulled the curtains open. Morning light streamed into the room, illuminating the city beyond the pond in Central Park. The frost-covered trees, people bundled in scarves, walking dogs across glistening paths. "New York looks different from up here," Marina whispered. "Most people never get to see it this way," he said. "But you deserve better views than you've been given." Her throat tightened. "You don't know me." A flicker, something unreadable, moved behind his eyes. "Maybe I know more than you think." Before she could ask what he meant, a loud knock startled them both. Adrian crossed the room and cracked the door open. Marina couldn't see who stood in the hall, but she could hear the irritation in Adrian's voice shift into something sharper. "You're not allowed up here," he said coldly. A familiar voice hissed back, dripping venom. "I'm her husband. You have no right to hold her here." Marina's heart plummeted. "Brandon." Adrian stepped fully into the doorway, blocking the view with his broad frame. You forfeited any right to her safety the moment you threw her into the street. She's my responsibility, not yours, Brandon snapped. Open the door. Marina clutched the blanket to her chest, shaking. Adrian didn't raise his voice, yet somehow the air dropped 10 degrees when he spoke. You will not enter this suite, not today, not ever without her consent. A beat of silence. A storm brewing. Then Brandon spat. She'll come home with me. She always does. Marina's breath hitched. Adrian leaned forward, blocking Brandon entirely. His voice dropped into a tone she had never heard from anyone: protective, dangerous. You should walk away now, he warned. Because the moment she tells me she wants you gone, I'll make sure you never get near her again. Marina pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. Because for the first time in her life, someone was ready to fight for her. And Brandon Hale was about to learn he'd picked a battle he couldn't win. Brandon's voice echoed down the hallway, even after Adrian slammed the suite door shut. Marina sat frozen on the edge of the bed, her hands buried in the blanket, her pulse thundering with leftover fear. She had spent years shrinking herself to survive Brandon's tempers, years swallowing words before they could rise. Now, hearing him shout outside this elegant suite made every instinct scream, run, hide, give in. But then Adrian turned back toward her. His expression wasn't angry. It wasn't impatient. It was steady, centered, like he had been carved from calm itself. Are you okay? He asked softly. Marina nodded, though her voice cracked. I'm sorry you had to deal with him. You don't apologize for someone else's cruelty, Adrian replied, his tone firm but gentle. He walked toward the small dining table and picked up a warm paper cup. Here, I brought this up earlier. I didn't know how you liked your coffee, so I asked them to make a few. He set down a tray. A latte, a cappuccino, a plain black coffee, and a peppermint mocha. Marina let out a small, surprised laugh. Why so many? Adrian shrugged lightly. Figuring someone out takes time. She reached for the cappuccino. Her fingers brushed his, and for a moment, the room felt impossibly still. Warmth spread through her chest, a strange, unfamiliar warmth. Not romantic, not yet, but comforting. Safe. Something she hadn't felt in years. As she sipped, he sat across from her, elbows resting loosely on the table. Snow fell outside the tall windows, soft flakes drifting like confetti from another world. We need to talk about what's next, Adrian said gently. You can't go back to him. Marina looked down at her cup. I know. I don't have anyone else. No family, no home, nothing to stand on. That's not true. Adrian's voice held a quiet conviction that made her look up. You stood on your own last night when you told him no. That didn't feel strong, she whispered. Strength rarely does when you're using it for the first time. Her eyes burned suddenly, unexpectedly. She didn't want to cry, not in front of him, not after everything. But the truth of his words cracked something open inside her. Adrian leaned forward slightly. I meant what I said at the hospital. You're not alone anymore. I can help you get on your feet. A lawyer, a temporary place to stay, whatever you need. But why? The question spilled out before she could stop it. You don't know me. You owe me nothing. And well, her gaze flicked over his tailored coat, his sophisticated posture. You. Adrian's eyes softened, a rare vulnerability glinting beneath his composed exterior. Because I've watched too many people get destroyed by the wrong kind of love, he said quietly. And I refuse to stand by when I can change the trajectory for someone who deserves better. Marina's breath trembled. He wasn't just offering help, he was offering belief. The kind she had forgotten existed. Before she could respond, a chime sounded from Adrian's phone. He glanced at the screen, then his expression changed, sharpening in an instant. What is it? She asked. He stood slowly. Your name is trending. Her heart stopped. What? He turned the phone toward her. A headline glowed back at her. Mystery woman in Kingsley rescue. Who is she? Dozens of photos, her lying in the snow, his coat around her, Adrian lifting her, were already circulating online. Her entire world tilted. And Adrian's jaw tightened as he said, We need to talk, because this is much bigger than you think. While Marina Ellsworth sat frozen in shock at the sight of her own name trending online, another part of the city buzzed with a very different kind of energy. Inside a boutique on Fifth Avenue, one so exclusive it didn't even display prices, Sabrina Cole strutted out of a fitting room in a sequined dress that shimmered like broken glass. She twirled once, admiring her reflection, her smile sharp as a blade. Brandon Hale lounged on a velvet sofa, scrolling his phone with a scowl. The video of Adrian Kingsley carrying Marina had spread everywhere. TikTok, Twitter, financial blogs, gossip pages, every platform was dissecting it like a national emergency. "I can't believe this," Brandon muttered. "She tripped in the street, and suddenly she's a celebrity? People are acting like she's some tragic heroine." Sabrina posed in front of a gilded mirror. "Well, to be fair, she did look tragic." Brandon shot her a glare. She rolled her eyes. "Relax. You said yourself she can't function without you. Let the public cry over her. She'll come crawling back once the attention dries up." But Brandon didn't look convinced anymore. He zoomed in on one photo, Adrian's hand splayed protectively across Marina's back, his expression intense, almost furious with concern. This was no random rescue. This was personal. Sabrina sauntered over, draping herself across his lap. "You're spiraling. It's not a good look." "She's with Adrian Kingsley," Brandon snapped. "Do you know what that means?" Sabrina blinked. "That she got lucky? No. It means people will assume I mistreated her. Kingsley only steps in when someone's in trouble, actual trouble." The boutique attendant, pretending not to eavesdrop, suddenly looked very interested in a rack of dresses. Brandon rubbed his forehead, pacing. "This could ruin my career. My boss is already watching me because of that sponsorship audit last quarter. If they think I'm abusive, or that I pushed her into traffic, I'm done." Sabrina froze in place. "You didn't push her, right?" He scoffed. "Of course not. I just moved her out of the way." She overreacted. Sabrina let the silence stretch, her expression unreadable. She knew something Brandon didn't. Her instructions, the real reason she entered his life, hadn't been about seducing him. It had been about observing him, and the man was digging his own grave beautifully. A new notification flashed on his phone. He read it and went pale. "Holy, they found the clip from last night's building security camera," he whispered. "It shows me yelling at Marina, throwing her suitcase. People think I kicked her out in the snow." Sabrina tensed. "Brandon, that's bad." "No, what's bad," he hissed, "is Kingsley. If he decides to help her, if he files something against me, my entire career is over." Sabrina's jaw tightened. She hadn't expected this twist, not this soon. She reached for her purse. "We should go. If things get worse, you need a strategy." Brandon grabbed her wrist. "You're not leaving me, not now." Her smile was thin. "You might not have a choice." "What's that supposed to mean?" he snapped. But before she could answer, her phone lit up. She glanced at the screen, and her entire face changed. No color, no confidence, just cold fear. Brandon leaned over. "Who is it?" Sabrina swallowed hard. "A number I hoped would never call me again." Brandon frowned. "Who?" She looked at him, dread pooling in her eyes. "The person who sent me to you." The lobby of Kingsley Tower rose like a cathedral of glass and steel, its soaring ceilings reflecting the glow of Manhattan's winter sunlight. Marina Ellsworth stood inside it as if she'd stepped into another universe, one where everything gleamed, everyone moved with certainty, and no one looked like they'd slept in fear the night before. She clutched the strap of her borrowed handbag, swallowing hard. "I shouldn't be here," she whispered. "You should," Adrian said beside her, his tone calm, final. "You need help navigating what comes next, and my office is the safest place in the city for you right now." Safe. She almost laughed. Safe wasn't a word she had used in years. Still, she followed him toward the private elevator. Every staff member they passed straightened at the sight of Adrian Kingsley, some respectful, some nervous, all curious. And every pair of eyes flicked toward Marina, because the woman trending online was now standing beside him. Inside the elevator, Marina's nerves buzzed like electricity. She smoothed her sweater, painfully aware of how out of place she looked. Adrian noticed. "You don't have to be nervous," he said quietly. "I'm not nervous," she lied. One raised brow told her he didn't believe it. The elevator opened into an expansive floor with panoramic windows overlooking Central Park. Adrian's office was minimalist but commanding dark wood, brushed steel, a massive desk with a sleek MacBook Pro and a Mont Blanc pen arranged with deliberate precision. A woman in a tailored suit approached them, Adrian's assistant, Elaine. Polished, elegant, intimidating. "Good morning, Mr. Kingsley," she said, then turned to Marina with a smile that was polite but very aware. "And you must be Miss Ellsworth. We've prepared a private lounge for you." Marina blinked. "For me?" Elaine gestured smoothly. "Of course, given the current media attention, discretion is necessary." Media attention. The words stung like ice. Adrian stepped closer to Marina. "We'll talk in my office in a moment. I need to make a call first." As he walked away, employees subtly peeked over cubicle walls. Whispers buzzed like static. "That's her. The woman from the video. She's actually pretty. Do you think they're—" Marina's stomach twisted. She hated attention. She hated eyes. She hated that her worst night had become a public spectacle. Elaine guided her to a lounge with plush chairs and a skyline view. "Can I bring you tea? Water?" Marina shook her head. "No, but thank you." Elaine hesitated, then surprised her by speaking softly. "Mr. Kingsley doesn't do this. Helping people. Bringing them here. Whatever happened last night, it meant something to him." Marina felt her breath falter. "I didn't do anything. It's stand. Sometimes doing nothing is enough," Elaine replied. She walked away, leaving Marina with her spiraling thoughts. Across the floor, Adrian entered his office and closed the door. His composed expression cracked the second he lifted his phone. A voice answered on the first ring. "You should have told her," the man said. "I will," Adrian muttered, "but not yet. She deserves to know the truth." "And I agree," Adrian said quietly, staring through the glass wall at Marina's small, uncertain figure. "But she needs stability first." Marina had no idea someone was speaking about her with such gravity. No idea that the man on the phone wasn't a colleague. He was her father's oldest friend. And he whispered one more warning. "If Brandon Hale continues interfering, he will destroy her. You must act before he does." Adrian's jaw tightened. "I intend to. And trust her." At that exact moment, the elevator dinged again. Marina turned toward the sound, and nearly dropped to the floor when she saw who stepped out. Because Brandon Hale had just walked into Kingsley Tower. Brandon Hale stormed into Kingsley Tower with the swagger of a man who believed the world still revolved around him. But the moment he stepped into the marble and glass lobby, that confidence wavered. Executives in tailored suits glanced over their shoulders. Receptionists whispered behind manicured hands. Security looked ready. This wasn't his world. This was Adrian Kingsley's world, a place built on precision, power, and reputation. And Brandon was walking into it like a lit fuse. At the far end of the lobby, Marina Ellsworth sat inside the employees' lounge, unaware of the storm heading her way. She stared out the window, hands clenched, trying to steady her breathing. New York stretched beneath her like a glittering maze, full of possibilities she no longer knew how to trust. She didn't hear the elevator ding. She didn't hear the rising murmurs. But she felt the shift the way the air tensed, like a wire pulled too tight. "Marina," his voice. She froze. Brandon stood in the doorway, eyes blazing with offended pride. He looked out of place here, still wearing the arrogance from last night, but now cracked by panic. Marina's stomach twisted. "How did you—" "Don't worry about that," he snapped. "We're leaving. Now." She stiffened. "No, I'm not going anywhere with you." Brandon's jaw flexed. "You embarrassed me. That video made me look like what you are," she whispered. His nostrils flared. "I took care of you for years. And this is how you repay me? Running into traffic? Throwing yourself at some billionaire?" Her voice trembled, but her spine stayed straight. "I didn't throw myself at anyone. I slipped. And Adrian helped me because you—" Her breath hitched. "You threw me out. On Christmas night." He reached for her arm. But before he could touch her, a hand clamped around his wrist with lethal precision. Brandon froze. The room froze. Time froze. Adrian Kingsley stood behind him, posture relaxed but eyes darker than winter storms. "I believe," Adrian said calmly, "she told you no." Brandon jerked his hand back. "You think you can just interfere in my marriage?" "You ended that marriage the moment you put her on the street," Adrian replied, each word clipped like a sealed contract. Brandon stepped closer, pointing at him. "You think you're a hero? You think she actually wants you?" She's weak. She needs someone to manage her. Something inside Marina broke open, not pain this time, but anger. Pure, sharp, long-buried anger. "You don't get to speak for me anymore," she said. Brandon turned, stunned. "Excuse me?" "I said no," Marina repeated, voice shaking but growing stronger. "I won't go with you. I won't live with you. I won't be treated like I'm disposable ever again." Her words echoed in the lounge, heavy and undeniable. For the first time, Brandon looked rattled. "Marina, be rational. You can't survive without me." Adrian's voice slipped in like steel. "She already has." Security approached discreetly, waiting for a signal. Brandon glanced around the suites, watching him, the guards closing in, Marina standing taller than he'd ever seen her, and Adrian Kingsley beside her like a fortress she never had. "This isn't over," Brandon spat. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." Adrian stepped forward, his tone quiet but deadly. "No, Brandon. You don't." And then Brandon's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and the little color left in his face drained completely, because flashing across it was a headline he hadn't expected. "Internal audit launched into Brandon Hale's sponsorship accounts." In front of everyone, his throat bobbed in panic, and Marina realized Brandon wasn't the storm anymore. He was the one about to be swept away. Marina Ellsworth sat on the edge of a leather chair in Adrian Kingsley's office, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The adrenaline from Brandon's outburst still pulsed through her body, but the atmosphere here, quiet, refined, controlled, felt like another world entirely. Through the glass wall, she could see the city stretched out in winter's stillness, snow drifting past skyscraper windows like feathers shaken loose from the sky. Adrian stood near his desk, speaking in a low voice to someone on the phone. She couldn't hear the words, but the tone told her enough. Calm, firm, protective. A tone belonging to someone who made decisions that changed the course of other people's lives. When he hung up, he turned toward her with a gentler expression. "Marina, there's something we need to discuss. But first, are you feeling all right? That was a lot to deal with." She nodded shakily. "I'm okay, just overwhelmed." "That's understandable." He took a seat across from her, leaning forward slightly. "But I want you to know this. Brandon can't walk into this building again. Security has already flagged him. If he tries anything, they'll remove him." Relief rippled through her body, but also disbelief. She was not used to being defended. "Adrian," she said softly, "you don't have to keep protecting me. I'm not your responsibility." "Maybe not," he replied, "but that doesn't make your dignity negotiable." Her breath caught. No one had ever spoken about her dignity before, not like it mattered. Adrian opened a folder on his desk and slid it toward her. Inside were business cards, notes, and documents she didn't recognize. "These," he said, "are contacts for attorneys who specialize in domestic disputes, asset recovery, and protective orders. I've already briefed one of them, discreetly, and they're willing to take your case. They know your situation." Marina stared at the folder as if it might burn her fingers. "You talked to someone about me? Already?" "Yes," he answered. "Last night, after you fell asleep at the hotel." End quote. She inhaled sharply. "Why would you do that?" His eyes softened. "Because I saw a woman who deserves far more than what life has given her so far. And because you shouldn't fight this alone." Her throat tightened painfully. She looked away, blinking fast. Adrian continued, his tone measured. "Brandon has taken more from you than any marriage vows require you to endure. A legal route is the only way to ensure he can't manipulate or threaten you again. Thank you for watching." "I don't have money for a lawyer," Marina whispered. "You won't need any." Adrian met her gaze steadily. "The attorney is covering the initial consultation pro bono. After that, we'll find a way. You're not trapped." She didn't know how to respond. Gratitude, humiliation, fear, hope all collided in her chest. Then Adrian added quietly, "There's something else." He reached into the folder and pulled out a printed form. A simple but profound step. A petition for legal separation. Marina froze. The words blurred. "I'm not pressuring you," Adrian said gently. "This is your choice. But if you want a clean break emotionally, legally, financially, this is where it begins." She touched the paper with trembling fingers. Leaving Brandon wasn't just a decision. It was a rebirth that terrified her. "I don't know if I'm ready," she whispered. "You don't need to be," Adrian replied. You just need to decide whether you want your life back. I have forma. Texture. She exhaled shakily, staring at the document as if it might split open her future. But before she could speak, Elaine knocked once, then entered, her expression tense. Mr. Kingsley, you need to see this. She handed him a tablet. Adrian angled it toward himself, then his jaw tightened. He turned the screen to Marina. A new headline glowed. Brandon Hale, accused of sponsorship fraud, investigation begins. The world was catching up to his sins. But the real shock came next. Brandon had just named Marina as a co-signer on every fraudulent contract. The tablet trembled faintly in Marina's hands as she reread the headline, hoping desperately that her eyes were wrong. Brandon Hale, accused of sponsorship fraud, investigation begins. Co-signer. Marina Ellsworth Hale. Her breath collapsed in her chest. No, Marina whispered. No, I never signed anything. I never even saw these documents. Adrian leaned closer, scanning the contracts. His jaw tightened. Your signature was forged. Marina's stomach twisted violently. He's trying to take me down with him. Adrian nodded slowly. Because he knows the investigation is real. He's panicking. And desperate men do desperate, reckless things. Her hands shook around the tablet. Adrian, I could go to jail. No, he said firmly. You won't. I won't allow it. She looked at him, eyes wide and shimmering. She wanted to believe him, but life had never given her the luxury of trust. Adrian rose from his chair and strode to the large windows overlooking Central Park. He forged a financial signature, attached your name to fraudulent sponsorship accounts, and submitted them to his company. He turned back, expression sharpening. This isn't just unethical, it's criminal. Marina sank deeper into the chair, her voice barely a whisper. Why is he doing this to me? I stayed. I supported him. I tried so hard. Because men like Brandon don't want equal partners, Adrian interrupted gently. They want shadows they can control. Her breath trembled. For the first time, she wasn't seeing herself through fear, but through truth. Adrian walked back to her and crouched so they were eye level. Marina, listen to me carefully. This is not your fault, and this is not the end. Tears slipped silently down her cheeks, not of weakness, but of release. He reached for a tissue box on the side table and set it near her, giving her space but not distance. I've already contacted the attorney. They're assembling a case. We'll make it clear your signature was forged. We? She echoed. Yes. His gaze locked onto hers with steady warmth. You're not fighting this alone. You're starting to take your life back. His conviction settled inside her like a small flame, fragile but real. A knock came at the door. Elaine stepped inside with a leather folder in hand. Mr. Kingsley, the legal team sent over the documents you requested. Adrian accepted it and handed the folder to Marina. Inside are forms to begin protecting yourself legally. Financial freeze, signature challenge, identity protection. Once these are filed, Brandon won't be able to use your name again. Marina opened the folder with trembling fingers. Rows of papers, signatures, affidavits, all things that once terrified her. Yet now, something inside her shifted. For the first time in her life, she wasn't waiting for someone to decide her fate. She was choosing it. I want to sign, she whispered. Adrian's eyes softened. Good. She picked up the Mont Blanc pen from his desk. Its weight felt unfamiliar, heavy, but in a powerful way. She pressed the tip to the paper. Her name flowed across the page with quiet determination. When she finished the last signature, she exhaled shakily. How do you feel? Adrian asked. She thought about it. Not safe, not yet. Not victorious. But stronger. Like I just took my first step, she said. A faint smile touched Adrian's lips. Then let's take the next ones together. Before she could speak, Elaine hurried back into the room, breathless. Mr. Kingsley, there's a problem. Adrian straightened. What now? Elaine swallowed hard. Brandon Hale is downstairs again. And this time, he brought a lawyer and a news crew. It's Washington. The lobby of Kingsley Tower had seen power struggles before competitors. Desperate investors, entitled heirs, but it had never seen anything quite like Brandon Hale, stumbling in with a lawyer on one side and a news crew trailing behind him like vultures sensing blood. Camera lights flickered across the marble walls, microphones jutted forward, The air hummed with that unmistakable electricity, the kind that signaled a scandal in the making. Upstairs, Marina Ellsworth heard the chaos long before she understood it. Raised voices, the whir of elevator security locks, footsteps rushing down halls. She stood from her chair, heart pounding. Adrian Kingsley's calm exterior finally cracked. His jaw clenched, and his voice dropped into a tone she'd never heard, one edged with danger. "He brought a news crew into my building," he said. This was his last mistake. Elaine hovered near the doorway, anxious. "Security is containing them for now, but they're refusing to leave. They keep shouting that Marina is involved in financial crimes." Marina's knees wobbled. "Crimes? But Adrian steadied her with a hand on her shoulder. "You did nothing wrong. This is a stunt. A pathetic attempt to shift blame. But this stunt had teeth, and Brandon was sinking them into her reputation for the whole city to see." Adrian turned to Elaine. "Keep Marina here. Do not let anyone inside without my permission." "Yes, Mr. Kingsley." Then he strode out, passing through the glass doors with a command that sent staff scattering out of his path. Marina pressed trembling hands to her chest. She wasn't afraid of Brandon yelling at her anymore. She was afraid of what lies he'd spit when a camera was pointed at his face. Downstairs, the scene was erupting. Brandon stood at the center of the lobby, sweat beading on his forehead despite the winter chill clinging to his coat. He shoved a stack of forged documents toward the cameras. "My wife," he declared dramatically, "illegally signed off on sponsorship funds. She's been unstable for months. I've been trying to help her, but she ran off with this man." He stabbed a finger toward the elevator. "Kingsley." Reporters gasped. Flashes burst. Brandon's lawyer spoke next, voice rehearsed. "We are filing an immediate injunction against both Miss Ellsworth and Mr. Kingsley for interference, defamation, and financial misconduct." Chaos erupted. Journalists shouted questions. Where is Marina now? Did Kingsley hide her? Is this a cover-up? And then, the elevator slid open. Adrian walked out with the quiet presence of a man who didn't need to raise his voice to silence a room. His expression gave nothing, but the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Mr. Hale," Adrian said, stepping forward, "your allegations are both false and defamatory." "Well," Brandon barked a laugh. "Oh, really? The whole city saw you carrying my wife like some damsel in distress. Who are you trying to impress?" Adrian's eyes sharpened, cold as winter steel. "First," he said, "she is not your wife anymore. Not emotionally, not legally, not morally. You forfeited that title when you abandoned her in the street." The crowd murmured, shock rippling like a wave. Brandon's face turned a blotchy red. "You think you can hide her? You think you can protect her from the law?" Adrian stepped closer until they were inches apart. "The only person she needs protection from is you." A collective gasp swept through the room, and then Adrian raised the folder in his hand. "Inside this are the documents proving every signature with her name on it was forged. By you. We will pursue charges." Brandon staggered back, but before he could respond, the elevator behind Adrian dinged again. Marina had stepped out pale but standing tall. Every camera swung toward her, and Brandon's expression turned from rage to pure, bone-deep panic. Because Marina was no longer the woman he could intimidate. She was the woman about to bring him down. For a heartbeat, the lobby of Kingsley Tower felt suspended in time. Cameras froze in midair, reporters held their breath, and Brandon Hale stood rigid, caught between fury, humiliation, and something far more desperate. Marina Ellsworth stepped fully out of the elevator, the soft scrape of her boot echoing through the space. Her sprained ankle still ached, but she walked as if the pain belonged to someone else. Adrian watched her carefully, seeing both the fear in her eyes and the strength rising beneath it. He took one step back, not away from her, but for her, making space for what she needed to do. Marina inhaled, steadying her trembling hands, and faced the cameras. "I'm here," she said quietly. Her voice carried anyway, cutting through the noise like a clean blade. A reporter rushed forward. "Miss Ellsworth, did you commit financial fraud?" "No," she said firmly. "I did not. I never signed those documents." Brandon barked a laugh, too loud, too sharp. "She's lying. She always lies when she gets cornered." Marina turned her head toward him slowly. "No, Brandon. I stayed quiet for years because you taught me to fear my own voice." Whispers rippled through the crowd. Brandon sneered. Oh, here we go, the victim routine. You're unbelievable. Marina held his gaze. Not unbelievable, just done. A murmur, a shift in the room. She felt it too, that line inside her, snapping cleanly. You forged my signature, she continued. You used my name to cover your own mistakes, and you threw me out of our apartment to make room for someone else. Sabrina, watching from the back of the lobby in a dark coat and sunglasses, flinched. Reporters fired questions like bullets. Did he really kick you out on Christmas night? Were you injured when you left? Does Mr. Kingsley have any involvement in your case? Marina lifted her chin. Adrian found me after I slipped on ice. He helped me, that's all. Brandon lunged forward, pointing at her. You ruined my life. You're doing this for attention. No, Marina said, cutting him off again, voice steady. You ruined your life when you chose cruelty over honesty. Mistress. Adrian's eyes softened with pride. He had seen powerful board members quake under pressure, but Marina was standing her ground in front of the entire city. She continued, I will pursue legal separation, and I will not be afraid of you ever again. Security shifted. Cameras flashed violently. The crowd leaned in. Brandon's face twisted. You think you're strong now because Kingsley is standing behind you? You think you matter? Marina took a step forward. No, Brandon. I matter because I exist, not because someone else says so. Gasps. Even Sabrina lowered her sunglasses, stunned. Brandon sputtered, turning to the cameras. This is all staged. Kingsley manipulated her. That's enough, Adrian said, stepping beside Marina, not in front of her, but beside her, a silent declaration. Cameras swiveled wildly between them. Brandon's lawyer stepped in, sweating. Mr. Hale, perhaps we should. But Brandon shoved him aside and shouted toward the upper floors of the tower, as if yelling at the entire city. You'll regret this. All of you. I'm not going down alone. Those words echoed ominously. Then, a phone rang. Not Brandon's, not Marina's. Sabrina's. She stared at the screen, her face draining of color. The same unknown number from before. She answered with a whisper. Yes? A cold voice hissed back. You failed. And now you're going to fix what you broke. Sabrina's knees nearly buckled. And Marina, watching her from across the lobby, felt a chill creep up her spine. Because Sabrina wasn't looking at Brandon anymore. She was looking at her. And something in Sabrina's eyes said, Marina wasn't just part of Brandon's downfall, she was part of someone else's plan. The moment the confrontation ended, Adrian guided Marina away from the chaos of the lobby, shielding her from cameras and raised voices. She followed him silently, her mind spinning, her pulse still rattling from everything she had just said, everything she had finally let herself say. They stepped into the private elevator, and as the doors closed, the noise below faded like a distant storm. Marina let out a shaky breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. You were incredible, Adrian said quietly. She shook her head. I was terrified. Courage isn't the absence of fear, he replied. It's choosing to stand anyway. And you did. His words settled around her like a blanket of warmth. She stared down at her hands, hands that had once trembled from Brandon's anger, hands that had signed documents out of obligation, hands that now felt capable. I didn't know I had that in me, she whispered. You always had it, Adrian said. You just never had anyone to remind you. The elevator door opened to the underground parking garage, where a black Mercedes waited. Snow drifted through the open entrance, swirling gently in the dim winter light. Marina hesitated. Where are we going? Adrian offered a small, rare smile. Somewhere quieter. Somewhere that belongs to you tonight. They drove in silence through Manhattan, passing glittering storefronts and decorated lampposts. The city sparkled with Christmas lights, warm, soft, magical, but Marina felt something deeper than the season's glow. She felt room to breathe. Minutes later, the Mercedes pulled into Central Park, blanketed in untouched snow. Adrian helped her out, careful of her injured ankle, and guided her down a path lined with twinkling lights. Adrian, what is this? You'll see. They reached a small clearing overlooking the frozen lake. A bench sat beneath a canopy of fairy lights strung between the branches, glowing like stars brought down to earth. On the bench lay a neatly wrapped box, simple, silver, elegant. Marina stopped dead in her tracks. This isn't for me. It is, Adrian said. I had it sent here this morning. Her eyes widened. Why? Because you deserved at least one good memory from this Christmas. Her breath hitched. She approached the bench slowly, as if the box might disappear if she blinked too fast. With careful fingers, she unwrapped it. Inside was a soft cashmere scarf, pale blue, the color of frost and calm skies. She brushed it with her fingertips, overwhelmed. "It's beautiful," she whispered, "but I can't accept something like this." "It's not payment," Adrian said gently. "It's not pity. It's a reminder that you are worth gentleness, worth comfort, worth being treated with care." Tears pricked her eyes. She wasn't used to kindness without cost. He stepped closer, lifting the scarf and draping it around her shoulders with quiet reverence. The warmth seeped instantly into her skin. "Thank you," she murmured. Adrian met her gaze, something unspoken, passing between them, soft, steady, dangerous in its tenderness. Neither of them moved. The lights shimmered above. Snow fell in silent applause. A moment she had never imagined for herself bloomed in the cold air, a moment where hope didn't feel foolish. She opened her mouth to speak, but her phone buzzed. A single text message. From an unknown number, the same number that had called Sabrina. Marina's heart stopped as she read the words. "You don't know who you are yet, but I do. And it's time you found out." Sabrina Cole stood alone on the balcony of her high-rise apartment, the winter wind biting her skin as she replayed the voice that had slithered through her phone minutes earlier. "You failed. Fix it." Her hands trembled as she tucked her phone into her coat pocket. She had entered Brandon's life under someone else's orders, but she had never expected the assignment to spiral into a citywide scandal, or that Marina Ellsworth, the quiet, overlooked wife, would become the center of it. She had underestimated her. They all had. Inside, the apartment felt suddenly too warm, too small. Brandon paced frantically across the living room, cursing under his breath as he watched news coverage of his downfall. His face looked ghostly under the bright TV lights. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. "They're treating me like a criminal. Me," he jabbed a finger at the screen. "And look at her, look at Marina, standing next to Kingsley like she belongs there." Sabrina stayed silent. Brandon didn't notice the way her eyes flickered with guilt or fear. "Someone is sabotaging me," he continued. "Someone planted this fraud nonsense. Marina doesn't have the guts to pull something like this off." Sabrina's jaw tightened, because she knew who did. Across town, in the Plaza Hotel, Marina sat on the edge of the bed with the pale blue scarf wrapped around her shoulders. Snowflakes drifted outside the windows like falling secrets. The message on her phone still glowed. "You don't know who you are yet, but I do." She read it a dozen times, her heart thudding with confusion and dread. She didn't recognize the number. She had no family, no connections, no one who would say something like that. Except Adrian. He stood near the window, hands in his coat pockets, studying her carefully. "The message shook you." "It scared me," she whispered. "I don't know who would send it." Adrian nodded once, thoughtful. "May I see the number?" She handed him the phone. His eyes scanned the screen, and for the first time since she met him, something flickered through his composed features. Recognition, followed quickly by worry. "Adrian," she asked, "what is it?" He shook his head slowly. "Not yet. I need to confirm something before I tell you." Her stomach twisted. "Tell me what?" He didn't answer, which terrified her more than the message. Meanwhile, back in Sabrina's apartment, Brandon's frantic pacing intensified. His phone buzzed again. He grabbed it without thinking. "It's the firm," he breathed. "They want an emergency meeting. They think I might have to step down." Sabrina watched him unravel. The arrogance that once filled every inch of him had collapsed into something small and frightened. "You need to calm down," she said. "Calm down?" Brandon exploded. "My entire life is falling apart because of that pathetic woman." Sabrina's expression hardened. She had reached her limit. "She's not pathetic, Brandon," she said quietly. "She's surviving something you tried to break." He spun toward her, enraged. "You're taking her side now?" "I'm taking the side that isn't self-destructing," she replied. Brandon lunged toward her, gripping her arm. "You listen to me." But Sabrina shoved him off, her voice snapping like ice. "Don't touch me. Not ever." He stared at her, stunned. Then, her phone buzzed again. That same number, the one she feared. Her breath caught as she answered. "Hello?" The voice came through, low and absolute. "Step back, Sabrina. You are no longer needed. The truth is about to reach Marina, one way or another." Her blood ran cold. Back at the plaza, Adrian finally exhaled and looked directly at Marina. "Marina, there's something you need to know about your past." The air stilled, and Marina felt, in her bones, that life was about to change again, this time in a way she could never have imagined. Marina Ellsworth felt her pulse flutter painfully beneath her skin as Adrian Kingsley stood before her, the winter night pressing softly against the windows of the plaza suite. His expression, usually so composed, so unreadable, was weighed with something heavier than concern. "Marina," he said quietly, "the message you received, it wasn't random." Her breath caught. "Then who sent it?" Adrian hesitated, and that hesitation terrified her more than anything Brandon had ever done. She'd never seen him search for words. Finally, he spoke. "Someone connected to your past. Someone who's been watching over you, in a way. From a distance." "My past?" she whispered. "I don't have a past. I grew up in foster care. My parents died when I was a baby. There's no one left." Adrian exhaled slowly. "That's what you were told. It's not the truth." Marina's world seemed to tilt. "What are you saying?" Before Adrian could answer, a sharp knock shattered the quiet. 3 rapid bangs. Urgent, uncertain. Adrian stiffened. That was not a hotel staff knock. He motioned Marina behind him, then opened the door, only to find Sabrina Cole standing there, drenched in snow, mascara streaked beneath her eyes, breathing in jagged gasps as if she had sprinted the entire way. "Sabrina?" Marina said, stunned. "What? Why are you here?" Sabrina pushed past Adrian, something no one else would dare to do, and shut the door behind her. She turned to Marina, and for the first time, there was no arrogance, no smirk, no victory in her expression. Just fear. Real, trembling fear. "Marina," she said, voice breaking, "you're in danger." Adrian stepped forward. "You need to leave." "No," Sabrina snapped, shaking her head wildly. "You don't understand. This is bigger than Brandon, bigger than all of us." Marina looked between them, confused. "What are you talking about?" Sabrina swallowed hard, tears glistening. "I wasn't with Brandon because I liked him. I never did. I was sent to him to monitor him. Someone knew he'd eventually drag you into his mess. Someone who wanted access." "Access to what?" Marina asked. Sabrina's voice cracked. "To you." The room temperature seemed to drop. "Me?" Marina whispered. "Why me?" Sabrina pulled a folded document from her coat, hands trembling. She held it out to Marina. "Because of this. I stole it from the man who hired me, before he could destroy it. Thanks for watching." Marina unfolded the paper slowly. It wasn't a letter. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't even addressed to Sabrina. It was a birth certificate. Her birth certificate. And the father's name printed on it spiraled through Marina's mind like a detonation. Jonathan Ellsworth. Her throat closed. "No, that's impossible. My father died before I turned 2. I saw the paperwork." "That paperwork was falsified," Sabrina whispered. "Your father didn't die. He disappeared. And he left something behind for you, a trust, an inheritance, a legacy, and someone wants to control it." Marina's legs nearly gave out. Adrian caught her before she fell. "How long have you known?" he demanded. Sabrina flinched. Not everything. Just that Marina wasn't who she thought she was. That someone powerful needed her vulnerable so they could claim what's hers. Marina's heart pounded so hard she could barely hear. Who would do that? Sabrina's lip trembled. "The same person who sent the message. The man who hired me. The one who forged the documents Brandon used." Adrian's voice dropped to ice. "Say his name." Sabrina's eyes met Marina's, filled with regret, fear, and something like pity. "Marina, the man coming after you is your father's former business partner." She took a shaking breath. "And he believes everything your father built should have been his." The room spun. Marina felt her world collapse and rebuild itself in one violent heartbeat. Because the truth wasn't just painful, it was dangerous. And the man hunting her had just arrived in New York. The annual Winter Charity Gala at the Metropolitan Pavilion was the kind of event where New York's elite arrived in chauffeur-driven cars, where diamonds glittered brighter than the chandeliers, and where reputations could be made or destroyed in a single evening. Marina Ellsworth stood at the entrance in a simple but elegant black gown Adrian had arranged for her. Her pale blue scarf draped over her shoulders like a quiet declaration of her new beginning. She felt exposed, fragile, but determined. Tonight wasn't about glamour. Tonight was about reclaiming her name. Adrian stepped beside her, dressed in a tailored tux, every inch the untouchable CEO. But the look he gave her wasn't polished or distant. It was grounding, steady. "You don't have to speak tonight," he reminded her softly. "Just being here tells the truth." She nodded, though her heart rattled like a loose pane of glass. Inside, the atmosphere buzzed. Cameras flashed, conversations halted, people whispered. "That's her. The woman from the Kingsley video. Is she really linked to the Ellsworth legacy?" Sabrina Cole appeared moments later, dressed surprisingly modestly, her hair pulled back, her expression tight. She wasn't here to shine. She was here to testify. Her presence alone sent a ripple through the crowd, but the temperature in the room shifted sharply when Brandon Hale stormed in. He wasn't invited, but he arrived in a wrinkled suit, desperation clinging to him like sweat. His lawyer followed, already defeated. "There she is," Brandon shouted, pointing at Marina. "That liar, she's been manipulating all of you." Security moved toward him, but he shoved past them. His anger rolled through the crowd like a toxic fog. "She forged nothing. I only used her name because she never pays attention to anything. And Kingsley," he jabbed a finger at Adrian, "you took advantage of her emotional state." Adrian stepped forward, calm but ice-edged. "You should stop talking before you bury yourself further." Brandon sneered. "You think you can hide the truth? Marina's unstable. She always has been. And now she's pretending she's some heiress? Please." A hush swept through the ballroom, because someone new had entered the room. A tall man in a charcoal coat, silver hair, sharp eyes, a presence that silenced even the wealthiest in attendance. Sabrina whispered, almost reverently, "He's here." Adrian stiffened. Marina turned toward the man, confused, unsettled. The stranger's gaze landed on her with a weight that made her breath catch. "Marina Ellsworth," he said, voice deep, measured. "You look so much like your mother." Her entire body froze. "Do I know you?" "No," he said softly, "but I knew your father." A stunned murmur swept the room. Brandon scoffed. "Oh, great. Another actor in her little drama." The man ignored him. He reached into his coat and pulled out a sealed envelope, aged paper embossed with a crest she didn't recognize. "This," he said, handing it to Marina, "was meant for you on your 25th birthday. Your father trusted me to deliver it." Her hands shook as she accepted the envelope. "Why didn't I get it?" she whispered. The man hesitated. Guilt flickered in his eyes. "Because someone prevented it. Someone who believed your inheritance belonged to them." Brandon laughed loudly. "Oh, please, what inheritance? Marina has nothing." But Sabrina stepped forward, voice clear and cutting. "She has a fortune, a trust fund worth more than Brandon could earn in 10 lifetimes. And someone forged documents to keep her from ever learning it." Gasps erupted. Marina felt the world tilt, her vision shimmering. The silver-haired man gave a final warning. "Your father's partner is here tonight. He won't let the truth surface quietly." Marina clutched the envelope to her chest. "Who is he?" she whispered. The man looked directly over her shoulder. Adrian turned sharply, because standing across the ballroom, watching with cold, calculating eyes, was the man who had orchestrated every lie in Marina's life. The annual Winter Charity Gala at the Metropolitan Pavilion was the kind of event where New York's elite arrived in chauffeur-driven cars, where diamonds glittered brighter than the chandeliers, and where reputations could be made or destroyed in a single evening. Marina Ellsworth stood at the entrance in a simple but elegant black gown Adrian had arranged for her, her pale blue scarf draped over her shoulders like a quiet declaration of her new beginning. She felt exposed, fragile, but determined. Tonight wasn't about glamour. Tonight was about reclaiming her name. Adrian stepped beside her, dressed in a tailored tux, every inch the untouchable CEO. But the look he gave her wasn't polished or distant. It was grounding, steady. "You don't have to speak tonight," he reminded her softly. "Just being here tells the truth." She nodded, though her heart rattled like a loose pane of glass. Inside, the atmosphere buzzed. Cameras flashed. Conversations halted. People whispered. "That's her. The woman from the Kingsley video." Is she really linked to the Ellsworth legacy? Sabrina Cole appeared moments later, dressed surprisingly modestly, her hair pulled back, her expression tight. She wasn't here to shine. She was here to testify. Her presence alone sent a ripple through the crowd. But the temperature in the room shifted sharply when Brandon Hale stormed in. He wasn't invited, but he arrived in a wrinkled suit, desperation clinging to him like sweat. His lawyer followed, already defeated. "There she is," Brandon shouted, pointing at Marina. "That liar, she's been manipulating all of you." Security moved toward him, but he shoved past them. His anger rolled through the crowd like a toxic fog. "She forged nothing. I only used her name because she never pays attention to anything. And Kingsley," he jabbed a finger at Adrian, "you took advantage of her emotional state." Adrian stepped forward, calm but ice-edged. "You should stop talking before you bury yourself further." Brandon sneered. "You think you can hide the truth? Marina's unstable. She always has been. And now she's pretending she's some heiress? Please." A hush swept through the ballroom. Because someone new had entered the room. A tall man in a charcoal coat, silver hair, sharp eyes. A presence that silenced even the wealthiest in attendance. Sabrina whispered, almost reverently, "He's here." Adrian stiffened. Marina turned toward the man, confused, unsettled. The stranger's gaze landed on her with a weight that made her breath catch. "Marina Ellsworth," he said, voice deep, measured. "You look so much like your mother." Her entire body froze. "Do I know you?" "No," he said softly, "but I knew your father." A stunned murmur swept the room. Brandon scoffed. "Oh, great, another actor in her little drama." The man ignored him. He reached into his coat and pulled out a sealed envelope, aged paper embossed with a crest she didn't recognize. "This," he said, handing it to Marina, "was meant for you on your 25th birthday. Your father trusted me to deliver it." Her hands shook as she accepted the envelope. "Why didn't I get it?" she whispered. The man hesitated. Guilt flickered in his eyes. "Because someone prevented it. Someone who believed your inheritance belonged to them." Brandon laughed loudly. "Oh, please, what inheritance? Marina has nothing." But Sabrina stepped forward, voice clear and cutting. "She has a fortune. A trust fund worth more than Brandon could earn in 10 lifetimes. And someone forged documents to keep her from ever learning it." Gasps erupted. Marina felt the world tilt, her vision shimmering. The silver-haired man gave a final warning. "Your father's partner is here tonight. He won't let the truth surface quietly." Marina clutched the envelope to her chest. "Who is he?" she whispered. The man looked directly over her shoulder. Adrian turned sharply. Because standing across the ballroom, watching with cold, calculating eyes, was the man who had orchestrated every lie in Marina's life. For a long moment, Marina Ellsworth could not breathe. The ballroom stretched before her, a glittering sea of gowns, tuxedos, champagne flutes, and startled faces, but all she could see was the man standing across the room. The one with the cold, assessing stare. The man her father had once trusted. The man who wanted everything her father left behind. Nathaniel Crane, her father's former business partner. The shadow behind every forged document, every lie, every attempt to keep her powerless. Adrian shifted subtly, stepping closer to her, his presence grounding. But Marina didn't lean into him. Not anymore. She stood straight, one hand gripping the envelope Nathaniel never wanted her to receive. Nathaniel approached with deliberate calm, each step measured. The crowd parted for him, reverent and nervous. "Marina," he said, stopping a few feet away. "I had hoped we would speak privately." She swallowed hard. "Why? So you could lie again? Like you did my whole life?" A ripple went through the room. Cameras lifted. Conversations stopped. Nathaniel gave a thin smile. "Everything I did was to protect your father's legacy." "By hiding it from me?" she snapped. "By forging documents in my name? By using Brandon to keep me trapped?" Brandon, standing off to the side, paled. I didn't know." Nathaniel didn't even look at him. "You were a tool, nothing more." "It's also..." Brandon's face collapsed, humiliation burning across his skin. Sabrina stepped forward. "You hired me too. You paid me to manipulate him, to manipulate her." Nathaniel's gaze hardened. "Your job was to observe, not interfere." "But I did interfere," Sabrina said, voice cracking. "Because she didn't deserve any of this." A hush fell. Marina looked at Sabrina, really looked at her, and saw not a villain, but a girl caught in something far bigger than herself. Nathaniel exhaled impatiently, as if addressing children. Marina, listen to me. Your father's assets were unstable. He made decisions that threatened everything we built. When he disappeared, someone had to maintain control. By stealing what he left for me? She demanded. Nathaniel's eyes flickered. A tell. Adrian's voice cut in, low and deadly. We have proof of everything you did: financial manipulation, falsified court records, obstruction of inheritance law. Nathaniel chuckled. Mr. Kingsley, you of all people should understand. Power isn't in proof, it's in perception. A dangerous glimmer flickered in Adrian's stare. Then let's shift perception, shall we? He nodded to someone behind him. The lights dimmed. A massive screen flickered to life. Security footage, emails, documents, contracts with forged signatures, financial transfers leading back to Nathaniel. The room gasped in unison. Nathaniel's composure cracked for the first time. Adrian stepped forward, voice amplified. Tonight, before New York's elite, including board members, investors, and legal authorities, Nathaniel Crane's network of fraud comes to light. Reporters surged, cameras flashed, people murmured in shock. Nathaniel lunged toward the screen. Turn that off. Security blocked him instantly. Marina's chest heaved, adrenaline burning through her veins. This wasn't just justice. This was truth reclaiming its place. Nathaniel turned to her, face twisted. You think this gives you power? You're nothing without your father's name. Marina stepped closer until she stood eye to eye with him. No, she said. I'm nothing because you made sure I believed that. But now I know who I am. And I'm not afraid of you. Nathaniel's jaw clenched. You'll regret this. No, Marina said, voice steady, clear, unshakable. You will. Security seized him. His charm gone, his power hollow, Nathaniel fought uselessly against the hands dragging him away. Cameras caught every second his downfall immortalized. Across the room, Brandon watched in horror. He had thought he was the villain of her story. He hadn't realized he was merely a pawn. As Nathaniel was escorted out, Marina felt Adrian's hand brush her elbow, gentle, grounding. It's over, he murmured. But before she could respond, the envelope in her hand began to slip open. Inside it lay the final truth her father wanted her to know. And when Marina read what was written inside, her entire future changed again forever. The ballroom buzzed with chaos as Nathaniel Crane was escorted out in handcuffs, cameras flashing like relentless lightning. Brandon Hale stood frozen in the corner, pale and trembling, his own downfall unraveling as murmurs spread through the crowd. He forged her name. He might face charges too. He ruined her life, and now justice. And another way. But Marina Ellsworth heard none of it. Her world had narrowed to the opened envelope in her hands. Inside was a letter yellowed, creased, written in her father's unmistakable handwriting. She raised it with trembling fingers, her heart pounding. My Marina, if you're reading this, then the truth has finally found you. I'm sorry I couldn't raise you the way you deserved. I'm sorry for every lie that kept us apart, but I did it to keep you safe from the man who now stands against you. Everything I built belongs to you. The Ellsworth Trust, the hotel shares, the investments, they are yours by birthright. Live freely, bravely, as your mother once dreamed for you. And know this, you were never abandoned. You were loved beyond measure. Your father? Tears spilled down Marina's cheeks, not of sorrow, but of finally stepping out of a darkness she didn't even know she'd been living in. Adrian watched her closely. Marina, what does it say? She lifted her eyes to him, voice trembling. It says, I was never alone, and I don't have to be scared anymore. A softness touched Adrian's usually guarded expression. You never will be. The gala slowly returned to motion. Reporters whispered. Guests watched Marina with newfound awe, but she didn't feel overwhelmed this time. She felt grounded, whole. Brandon stumbled toward her, face streaked with panic and sweat. Marina, please just tell them I didn't know. You have to help me. You owe me that much. She looked at him calmly, the fear of years replaced by a clarity he'd never seen in her before. I don't owe you anything, she said. Not my silence, not my life, not my future. He shook his head wildly. You can't do this to me. I'm not doing anything to you, she replied softly. You did it to yourself. Security pulled him back as he shouted her name, but Marina didn't flinch. Brandon Hale, her nightmare, her cage, her past, was finally behind her. Sabrina approached next, hesitant. Marina, I'm sorry for everything. I didn't know how deep it all went. Marina studied her for a long moment. Thank you for telling the truth. It helped more than you know. Sabrina nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks, before disappearing into the crowd, closing her own chapter. Later that night, after the police and press dispersed, Adrian led Marina outside into the quiet winter air. Snow drifted softly, muffling the city's noise. They walked to a balcony overlooking the skyline, lights flickering like 1,000 new beginnings. It's almost midnight, Adrian murmured. Marina gazed at the city, her city now, in more ways than she ever imagined. Adrian, thank you for everything. You don't have to thank me, he said gently. You saved yourself. I just stood beside you. She turned to him, emotions catching in her throat. What happens now? He reached for her hand, his touch warm against the cold night. Whatever you choose, he said. But if you'll allow it, I'd like to be part of your future. Her heart steadied finally, beautifully. I'd like that, she whispered. Fireworks burst above the skyline, gold, silver, blue, reflecting in the tears that gathered in her eyes. Marina leaned into Adrian's embrace, not as someone broken, but as someone reborn. The past was finished. Justice had arrived. And the future, her future glowed like the new year rising before her. For the first time in her life, Marina Ellsworth stepped into a tomorrow she truly owned. So that's it. Our story finally closes its last page. And if you're still here right now, my friend, it means something in Marina's journey touched your heart in a quiet, personal way. Maybe it reminded you of your own resilience, or of a moment you thought you'd never rise from. Life is unpredictable, sometimes painfully so. But as the Stoics remind us, the obstacle is the way. What breaks us often becomes what builds us. Marina learned that she was never powerless. She had simply forgotten the strength she carried inside. And maybe that's true for you too. Remember Marcus Aurelius' words, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Don't love. We can't choose what happens to us, but we can always choose who we become afterward. Healing isn't loud. It isn't quick. It's a quiet decision we make every day to step forward, even when our voice shakes. If this story made you feel seen, moved, or reminded you of your own worth, then don't leave just yet. Stay with us. Like this video, share it with someone who needs courage today, and subscribe for more stories that heal, inspire, and remind you that you matter more than you know. We're here with you, always.